She has received recognition by both the Canadian and US media. Her documentary film, Remembering Her Power, premiered at the 2018 Parliament of World Religion in Toronto. Aina-Nia is featured in the 2019 web series, Souls of Women. I want to welcome Aina-Nia to this forum as we, as Anglicans and others, grapple with the issue of anti-Black racism. Thank you.
Thank you, Canon Butler. It is an honor to be here. It is always good to speak with the faith community for asking me to join you. Before I begin, though, you know, as a Black woman living on this land, I cannot begin anything without acknowledging this land that we're on as the land of Indigenous peoples of many nations, and I have a responsibility as one living here to right covenants that have been wronged as we live and breathe here, and that I have a responsibility to steward this land and have good relations with those people who owns this land. Also, as an African woman, I have to acknowledge and thank those who have gone before me, those who have the ancestors of African descent, the 12.5 million Africans who were captured from their land and taken to the Americas, and for the 10 million who actually survived. Many of them did not. Many of them chose to commit suicide. And many were killed. More were killed, actually. And so there were 383,000 African people who settled in the Americas, including right here in Toronto. And so I know that it is my duty and my responsibility to always acknowledge those who have gone before me. And so while we have a Toronto action plan to confront anti-Black racism at the City of Toronto, I know that it happened way before me. I know that it happened. Many generations of Black people have been working and advocating for this cause. So again, thank you. I want to spend a little bit of time before I talk about the plan to talk about what anti-Black racism is. I come from a father who was an activist, and so he was an activist a lot in the 60s and 70s and 90s. As a matter of fact, I remember Canon Butler ministered at his funeral many years ago. And so I say that because as an activist, if we'd said to my father anti-Black racism, he would ask me what I'm talking about. And he was all about liberation for Black people. So I never want to start these conversations assuming that when we say anti-Black racism, everybody understands what we're talking about, and why not just say racism? And so I want to acknowledge Akua Benjamin, who actually was the first person who spoke to this in Canada and probably throughout the world, this term called anti-Black racism, and why is it different than racism itself. So if you could move the slide down for me, please. I want to break this down a little bit and not just talk to the academic, speak in academia. I want to talk about this in a real way, because racism is one thing. Why it's so important that we distinguish anti-Black racism is because there are three very distinct components of that makes this real. One, anti-Black racism is historically rooted. So it's rooted in African descent history and our experiences of enslavement and colonization in Canada. And that's really important that we remember that there were actually 200 years of enslavement right here in Canada, and specifically right here in Toronto. Secondly, it is stereotype driven. So the idea that it reflects and reinforces beliefs and attitudes and prejudices and stereotyping and discrimination that is directed at people of African descent. So for instance, I walk into a room as a Black woman, and often though I'm a director at the city, and often though I've done many things in my life that I know my mothers and my ancestors would be proud of, I walk into a room and there's an assumption that I am the helper, that I am the admin support, or you know, I certainly could not be in a leadership role at this level. Of course, not at all to assume that people who are admin supports or clerks or cleaners are not leaders. They're leaders in their own right. But there's an assumption that that's the only thing that I can do as a Black woman. So this stereotype that happens. And then thirdly, it's institutional, it's systemic, it's in the very core, it's in the policies and it's in the practices. It is embedded in the Canadian institutions, including the church. And so there are several examples that I can give you to prove that. And I won't spend a lot of time on that today, but I want to be very clear that there's a distinction when we talk about racism, which is often stereotype driven and often institutional too. What makes this very, very distinct is that we're still living the legacy of enslavement for us as Black people. And so can we move down? I want to break this down even further. I really just want to spend a couple of minutes. So the slide you're seeing is one more down, please. Talking about the the enslavement and the legacy of enslavement and how it shows up in our very experience today. What you're looking at is an ad. And this is an ad for a Black woman for sale. And this particular auction was happening on Peter Street in downtown Toronto, because that was one of the famous slave auction blocks that happened. Anyway, Peter Russell in York region was selling Peggy. And so Peggy was about a 34-year-old Black woman with a son, Jupiter, who was 15. And so if you can imagine in today's time, putting something on Craigslist probably. And because they needed to get rid of Peggy. You see, Peggy was a very, very, very strong Black woman. She was resistant to many things, and so she was not very happy being a slave, as no enslaved person was. But in particular, Peggy kept running away. So Mr. Russell needed to get rid of her, but she was difficult to get rid of because of the challenges that came with her. So they added her son, 15-year-old Jupiter, to this sale. And so I bring that up because there were many of this happening, right? Rooted in the very, very fiber of this country and of Canada and of Ontario and of Toronto. So just a quick example when we talk about the rootedness of African enslavement in our history. Next slide, please. And when we speak of institutions, and I'm sure that there are many examples within the Anglican Church, my father told me many stories. But when we talk about systemic and institutional, so if you take all of that and you bring it, because there is, you see, African people were seen as cargoes. That's why we were brought over the way we were brought over and captured. So we were seen as cargoes. But even this is just recent as August 12th, 1911, Prime Minister Sir Laurier declared an order that Black people should not be allowed in Canada. Not be allowed in Canada. This was an order by the highest level of government in this country, by the Prime Minister, a good man, a man that is revered as a Prime Minister. But I show you that to say that it's in the system, you see. It's in the system, who we are as Black people. The discrimination is in the very system. It's in the very institution. And so the next slide, please, speaks to stereotypes. And if I were doing a training, if we had a longer time, I would talk to you about the stereotypes of Black people, the many stereotypes. And so I just threw up a few here. So because there is no good stereotype. There is no good stereotype. If you say, oh, Black women are such good cooks, there's no good stereotype, because I'm a human being first. I'm a human being first. So to assume that I'm a good cook, actually, I may be a horrible cook. But I'm a Black woman, that doesn't mean I'm a good cook. Or because my son is tall and Black and beautiful, then he must be a basketball player. That sort of thing, and those assumptions that are then put on us, which lessens our ability for a successful lifespan. Next slide, please. And so we talk about genocide. You know, this history of enslavement has been upon us and has skewed the life chances and limited access to health and education, premature death, incarceration, impoverishment. That is what happens when we have 200 years of enslavement in a country, and then we have 400 years of oppression. Black people have been here for over 400 years. We were actually here before the British. You know, we joined the indigenous people of this land. And we have data, we have much data to show that. I won't spend time on that, but I thought it was important that we just spend some time. Why would we even want to address anti-Black racism? What is that about? What's the big deal? So I just wanted to give you a little taste. Next slide, please. And so this is what it looks like. This is the impact of anti-Black racism in Canada. And I want to speak specifically of Toronto, only Toronto right now. Black people make up 8.9% of the Toronto's population, less than 9%. Yet, 48% of all Black children live in low-income houses. 48% of all expulsion in the Toronto District School Board, 48% are Black children. 48% of the entire school board expulsion, 48% are Black children in a population that is only 8.9. So I say that we need to pause a little bit. This is need for pause. This is not an event, but this is a time for us as leaders, whoever we are, Black and non-Black, to step back and say, there is something wrong here. There's something wrong with this picture. We're 27%, well, there is no carding anymore, we're told, but with the profiling of Black people, 25.7%. And the story goes on, but I certainly can share this slide with you. The next slide, please. And even more frightening from a Canadian perspective, this was in 2017, actually, and we saw an increase of police-reported hate crimes from 2016 to 2017. And I'm telling you today, it's way more than this, a 40% increase. 43% of all police-reported hate crime was motivated by hate and ethnicity. And 47% of those were about Black people. What I know that this is not correct is that as Black people, we don't call the police. We don't call the police and we don't talk about hate crimes. We don't. We just don't. We're too distrusting of the system to do that. So if we're reporting 47%, I can assure you that it's way more than that. So why anti-Black racism? Toronto's Black community faces far greater risk of having serious mental health problems, and much of this is caused by anti-Black racism. There are studies that is showing that and proving that. So in 2016, Black Lives Matter, I know many of you are very familiar with this movement, but in 2016, I think, you know, there was a large heightening, kind of like now, but I'd say now it's even more. And so the mayor of Toronto, you know, there was a lot of pressure on the city, on the government, to do something about this, to do something about the killing of Black lives. And so I want to say what we did was the city decided to take action. City decided to take action. And what was important in this, if you think about having an action plan, because you must have a plan. If you want to address something, you must have a plan. You have a plan. We have a plan for everything. We have strategies. We have a plan. So if you want to address something, I would hope that the Anglican Church has a plan to address anti-Black racism. So what we did was look at 41 years of research and reports and activism, all of it saying exactly the same thing: how the government, how institution needs to address anti-Black racism. And we took that out to Black community and did further, I don't want to call it consultation, further conversations, and said to Black community, okay, here's what's coming up over and over and over, whether we looked at it in 1979 or we looked at it in 1986 or in 2003, it's saying exactly the same thing. Of what's happening, what do you see as still priority, whatever priority is now for black people, if there was something was to happen, and if so, what is relevant today, and if the city was to take action, what would that look like? Black community told us. Black community told us, and we took it to council as a report. It was an 18-month process, and on December 5th, it was an historic moment, not just for Black people, but for Toronto. Because what I do know is that we're dealing with targeted universalism. When, as an institution, you address the issues of those who are most marginalized, then what you're doing, in fact, is addressing the issues of all people. It's simple. It's simple. It's like building a ramp for those who can't walk up the stairs. Everybody benefits from that. So that's targeted universalism. So on December 5th, 2017, for sure, it was historic in Canada, in Toronto. And as far as we know, this is the only plan of its kind in the world. We're still searching, we're still looking for where else this happens so we can learn from it as well. Next slide. I'm now all the way, I apologize, I was going at my pace. So I'm on the slide about the action plan now, please. So a couple of slides down, thank you. One more down, please. Another one, thanks a lot. And so, so the action plan, it's a 5-year plan, 2018 to 2022. There are 22 recommendations, all came from Black community across 80 actions. So there are 20 high-level recommendations, 5 themes, and the themes are children and youth, of course, no surprise, job opportunities, health and community services, policing and the justice system, and community engagement and Black leadership. No matter what year we were looking at, these were the same things that Black people were asking for. And so here we have an action plan. Next slide, please, thank you. And so I want to just stop here for a moment and talk about the importance of the plan. So it's great to have a plan. We all know that. Many of you are leaders on this meeting. It's great to have a plan, but a plan can stay there and it can be this beautiful paper that's shiny things. You have some pictures and some charts and it's all nice and all of that. The key is in the implementation of the plan. It's in the execution of the plan. So one of the things that Black community said is that if you were going to have an action plan in the city of Toronto, you better make sure that there is dedicated staff to do this. So please, please, please do not have an action plan to address anti-Black racism with somebody doing this on a volunteer basis, with somebody doing this on the side of their desk. What we value, we give attention to. And if you do that, anybody, if we have a plan and that's how we're treating it, it means that we don't value what we're doing, what is being done. And so the community said, no, you have to have dedicated staff to implement this plan. So we established a unit. The unit has a manager, policy development officer, so people who are really looking at the policies in the city and its agencies and commissions and combing through that and making recommendations every single day. Community development, so people who are engaged in making sure that the community is involved and is aware and is informed, and that we're hearing from community so we can continue to support to implement the plan in the best way possible. We also have internships because we have to make sure that young people are getting the opportunity they need. So as part of the plan, every 6 months, every 5 months in fact, we have 2 interns, brilliant Black people who are coming through the unit and working in the city and paid internship so that they're developing and getting an opportunity to see whether they want to work with government. Why not? Why shouldn't they, right? The city of Toronto is the largest employer in Ontario. And then also we have a partnership and accountability circle. So what this is 12 Black people from a diverse background in the Black communities. I call it Black communities because we're so diverse and complex. And they keep the units and the work accountable. They keep the city accountable to make sure that the implementation happens, that every single action is implemented and implemented well. And so I want to pause here because when we're executing a plan, it's important that it's so much less about the content and more about how we implement, how we operationalize, how we engage the people that we're working with, the stakeholders, the divisions in the city, how we engage our intergovernmental partners, how we engage the community as a whole, making sure that the people who are working in this unit are skilled people. We have lawyer in our unit, we have PhDs in our unit, we have people with master's degree in huge leadership program. We have skilled people in our unit to make sure that this plan happens well. So I would encourage that if you should, and I encourage that you do this, make sure not only do you have the plan, but you have a plan to operationalize this. You have a framework that you're working with. We work within an Ubuntu framework. And for those of you who don't know it, it's a South African mostly, but it's spoken across the continent, the African continent, that says, I am because you are. And so we speak that constantly to our partners in the city, to everybody, to say, listen, you're not, this is not about taking care of those people who are needed, those very vulnerable Black people. No, this is about human rights. This is about equity. This is about doing the right thing. And when you do that for us as a community, you will benefit. I am because you are. And so if we have a broken system, if we have a system that is steeped in anti-Black racism, I want to say that is because you are. It is not the box and mortars. It's not the walls. It is the processes and the policies. So we have a framework that we work from. And lastly, it is critical that the work is being evaluated to make sure that you have an evaluation plan. How do you know that this is making an impact? How do you know that this is making a difference? If we could move further, I just want to share very quickly in this next 3 or 4 minutes some of the results that we've seen so far. So we just celebrated our 2nd year in May because the unit was established in May. We work in a bureaucracy, so although the plan was passed and approved December 17, it takes 5 months for us to get the unit up and running. So we just finished our 2nd year, and in that time, just want to share some results. Some of the things that we're working on is creating a culture of change at the city. We have to change the culture. And so there is a Black staff network. There's over 8,000 staff across city divisions, TTC, Toronto Police Services that have completed our learning program. I want to say though, please, doing an anti-Black racism training is not the answer. And so what we call a learning program is not about know what anti-Black racism is and then go back to your desk. We actually we actually present the training, attaching it to the work folks do. So how do you do your work differently? And so when people bring their work to the training, and we help them on how to operationalize the anti-Black racism plan. We of course recognize the International Decade for People of African Descent, and this year we had our first declared Black Mental Health Day. So the first Monday of every year in March, the first Monday in March, the city will celebrate Black Mental Health Day. So that's just one of the posters, was all over social media and in 76 bus sheds across the city. I just wanted to show, next slide, please. So that's just our poster. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. And so improving customer service. So we're, of course, working on the collection of social demographic data on a data for equity strategy. Corporate services are creating programs to give access to Black Torontonians so that they can access services and make complaints if necessary, and that it can be actioned. So there's a whole process in place. So far, there has been an investment of over $10 million to the Black community through city community grants that had not happened before. Next slide, please. Some other really great, awesome stuff that is happening. We're doing a lot of work with our Black, queer, and trans young people that are even further marginalized, and it's so important that institutions make an effort to ensure that the services that first of all, that they provide adequate services to Black, queer, and trans youth and their family for support. So we're working with a number of partners to make sure that this happens. And we've provided access to over 100 young people, especially last year, so they could access tech conferences and technology workshops, etc. Because we have to build our Black young people for the future and for employment. And then finally, some other results is around this, making sure that Black people have an opportunity to make decisions. I want to bring to your attention the littljamaica.com that was launched a few weeks ago, because it's important that we preserve our history here in Canada. And so right on Eglinton Avenue, Eglinton West, we're doing some work with a Black partner, the BBPA, to make sure that this happens and that it happens well, and we preserve our history, and that our businesses in that area get the support that they need. Next slide, please. And so, you know, we're in COVID, we're in recovery, we're in phase 2 of COVID. So as you can imagine, when a community is marginalized, when something like COVID happened, there is even deeper marginalization. So we developed within the CABR, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, a Black Resilience Cluster as part of the city's cluster to respond to residents. And they meet weekly, what we call B3s, which are Black focused, Black led, and Black operated agencies across the city, and to make sure that we're responding to to Black residents' need. So far, we have there's been an investment of $1.2 million to these organizations for emergency fund, and there is a $60,000 micro grant right now for grassroots organization to access, and the website is there. As I said, I will send the slide to you for access. Next slide, please. And finally, the investments in Black-led community agencies through COVID dedicated $1.29 million to 22 Black-led organizations to make sure that there is support that is happening around food, mental health, social connections, and family support. Next slide, please. And so just much more around our partnerships and what we've been doing around COVID. I want to stop there because I believe I am at time, and I want to make sure that you please know that you can go on the website and learn more about the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, about the action plan, and about all the things that are happening in the city to advance the lives of Black people. And you can just go on to toronto.ca/ABR or send an email. I'm afraid to say send an email because with the heightened awareness of anti-Black racism, we've been receiving anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 emails a day. So I'm almost afraid to tell you to send it, but please send it. We're working. We have several support that is helping us to get through these emails. And so that's what I want to share with you for this evening, and I'm open to questions. Thank you again so much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Aina-Nia, for that very thorough overview of the work you're doing with the city. And we appreciate you sharing your expertise and your time with us. So we're going to ask that if there are any questions, and I think there are some that came in already, that they be posted on the chat, and we'll try to get through to them. So if you have questions, please go to the chat and make a note, and we will post them to Aina-Nia. So let me see if I can find, so someone asked about getting a copy of the presentation, and I know you're going to be making it available.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the first question I see here is there a place for faith communities in the Toronto Action Plan?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We have been working, we've done some work with the Muslim community, and welcome all the time other faith communities to work with us. One of the things that we did last year, I believe, we did some work with a church around queer, trans, Black, queer, and trans youth, and the challenges that they're experiencing. And so please let us know. We would love to come in and do the work. And in the action plan itself, it speaks to leadership. It speaks to community leadership. Everything that is in the action plan relates to all institutions, including the church.
So we just need to be in touch with you at any level and you engage.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. And
Okay.
we welcome that, in fact.
Okay.
Because many of our, we know Black people are highly religious and highly spiritual people. And so we want to make sure that they are being responded to and recognized in whatever sphere of their life they're in.
Okay. Are you aware of other municipalities in Canada that have a similar anti-Black racism policy?
At this point, no. We have been contacted by many municipalities wanting to use this model, and we've been supporting other municipalities to do so. So at this point, we are not aware at all of other municipalities that are doing this across North America.
Okay. What thoughts do you have as to how the Diocese of Toronto as a faith community should deal with the problem of anti-Black racism?
I would say that the first thing the diocese should do, and I hope that the diocese has already done that, is to acknowledge that it exists. To acknowledge that anti-Black racism is within the institution, within your policies, within your practices. That anti-Black racism exists within your staffing, how your staffing experience. The first step, of course, is around acknowledgement, and then I would say a conversation with your Black communities within the diocese, and hear from them. We're happy to share with you the entire process that we used to have conversations with Black community. We actually created a little bit of a questionnaire that we had online, and also when we went out to communities, and we asked the same questions all the time. And the diocese must get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and really to acknowledge this as this is systemic. This is systemic. So this is not a finger pointing. There is no need for guilt or any of that. This is a systemic issue that needs to be dealt with, and so approach it from that place. Approach it from a place of listening. I remember when we were doing the consultations, we invited the mayor to come to some of those consultations, but the invitation was very, very, we had boundaries. And we said that the mayor could come, but there couldn't be any entourage, so he couldn't bring his people with him. There could be no media, and that he could not speak. So it was really a listening exercise for him to listen. And we're doing the same thing in the city with staff. We're setting up those meetings right now for the city manager and for the mayor and for others to hear from Black staff, to hear from Black people. And I think that step is critical, to just listen, and then to be committed to put money into an action plan, to put money into the consultations, to hire Black experts. Please do not put an action plan together with non-Black people. You need Black skilled people to make this happen, and then make sure that you're committed to carry this out. Because the worst thing that can happen, this is what creates distrust among the Black community so much, is that all of this happened, and then there's consultation, then there's probably even a plan, and then nothing happens. So there has to be a commitment, and commitment means money, to make sure that this happens. And look at all communities, the Black community is diverse, and it's complex, and it's beautiful, and it's important that what a youth thinks is very different from what a senior wants. You know, what mothers want is very, very different from what somebody who is in a particular profession area. We're all so very, very different. And so you should never ever take it for granted that we all want the same thing. We do not. But there are those themes are really important. They go back to asking, we all don't want it the same way, but we're all usually asking for the same thing. So let me be clear on that. But it's important to hear from different parts of the communities.
Yeah. Yeah, so often we tend to think that Blacks have to all believe one thing in order for some action to take place. We don't require that of the white community. They can have different thoughts and yet go forward. Moving on to other questions, you said that one of the goals you had was to make services more accessible to the Black community. How do you assess the services, how do you assess the services are indeed equally accessible or not?
Very true, very good question. So when we look at, I'm going to use something as basic as community centers. One of the feedback that we got during the conversations with Black community was how our young people and all people are dismissed and made invisible in communities, in community spaces, the city spaces in general. And so we work with divisions to audit those situations, to look at even how we present information, right? How we present information. Are Black people seeing themselves? How, when we put out an application for anything, where does it go? Who does it go to? When we put out a posting for recruitment and we say we can't find any Black people, no Black people applied. Where did you post? You know, so asking those very crucial questions. So we work very closely. The Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit work very closely with divisions. This week we had what we call our divisional leads tables. So divisions and agencies and boards and commissions that is connected to the city, the people who make the decisions meet every 2 months and go through the action plan on what is happening and what is not happening. And one of the big things is about we have 9 what we call operational questions for anti-Black racism analysis, and it's online. You can always go there and see it. And we help divisions to use those questions to identify how they are serving Black community. And, as I said, I encourage you to go there. So for instance, we would, one of the operational questions is, how is your space, or is your program, or is your policy, or is your protocol diverse? Does it ensure that there is diversity? Does it ensure that there is creativity, right? So is it just made in this cookie cutter way for one set of people, or are we supporting others, right? And so what I do know is that we have a long way to go. We have a very, very long way to go. Yeah. 400 years of oppression doesn't change in 2 years with a group of people in a city, right? But we're doing it multiple divisions at a time. We're working with them, and we're looking at their policies. We're looking at their practices. We're looking at even the way they advertise things. Divisions send stuff to us now for eyes on stuff, for analysis on things.
Perfect. Now, just want to remind our guests that we're here for 1 hour, so we have 50 minutes, and I think we have quite a few more questions. So we might be asking you, if possible, to just bear with us. We may go over the time, but we'll try and get through as many of these questions as possible. Can you discuss in depth the anti-Black racism that exists, or the structure racism in the church? I'm not sure you can. That's a question, but it's that you can. Do you want to address that? Oh,
because I don't think the church is any different from any other institution.
Okay.
I think the church, because it's of its hierarchy, right? Maybe even may even have some very, very, I would assume, I'm not in your church, I'm not in your diocese, so I don't know, but I would assume very, very structural anti-Black racism. So usually when I get asked that question, I ask folks to look at their at where Black people sit in their organization. And I'm not talking about the parishioners. I'm talking about the people who work within the diocese. Where do they sit? Are they at the entry level? Where are they in the middle? Are they at the top? Are they making decisions? When you go into your boardroom, when you go into your conference room, how many Black people are there? You know, those are some basic things. In your churches, are your programs responsive to Black needs? Are they culturally responsive? You know, how do you see Black people? Where are the stereotypes? And I would say just those are the things that you need to examine. I remember, and because I don't think institutions are very different. I think Canadian institutions are very similar. And I remember when we were doing this work, and the mayor had asked that the then director who was leading this work at the time, Denise Andre Campbell, had asked her to bring together the Black leaders in the city because he wanted to talk to the Black leaders. And when we got in the room, the mayor said, "Oh, are we waiting for people? Are we waiting for people?" And we said, "No, these are the Black leaders in an organization of the largest employer in Ontario, yeah. Over almost 40,000 employees." Right. So those I say that and I'm smiling and I'm laughing, but it's basic. It's basic. Just look at how your organization is set up.
Yeah. Who's where? Yeah.
Who's where?
Yeah. Next question. How were the 20 Black organizations chosen for the committee that you're working with?
Are you speaking about, is that
it doesn't give any context, but yeah.
I think that question might have to do with the Black resilience cluster during COVID, because I think that's the only place that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And so we had put some calls out on social media. We'd put calls out I believe in our newsletter. COVID was happening so fast. So we have a list of what we call B3, which is, I think at this point, it's almost 200. So these are Black organizations, from grassroots organizations to mainstream organizations. And so we put a call out to them and to let them know that their Black resilience cluster existed. We had staff calling folks. It was during COVID, so many places were closed. And so, and they continue to do that, right, as best as they can to get the word out there. And so at any given time for these bi-weekly meetings, I understand there are anywhere from 15 to maybe to 17 or 20 for agencies that come on. If you are interested, I hope you are. If you're a Black organization, please join that cluster. Lots happen there, right? So there's a lot of information sharing that happens there, and not just a Black cluster, but it is happening there. We have clusters right across. The city has clusters responding to COVID with agencies right across the city, but we have a specific cluster for Black organizations and one for Indigenous organizations. So if you're interested, you know, we're doing the best we can. Stay in touch, get on our website. We exist. I know a lot of people don't know we exist, but we exist. And
can you just tell us about what should we search for to get to your website?
So go to the website is toronto.ca/ABR, or if you put Confronting Anti-Black Racism, City of Toronto Confronting Anti-Black, or even just Confronting Anti-Black Racism anywhere in Google, it's going to come up. Tons of stuff is going to come up that will lead you there. But it is toronto.ca/ABR. Also, we're on Twitter. So if you put CABR anywhere on Twitter, it will come up. We're working on getting an Instagram page.
Okay, and in that line, I think there's a question about why is your work not more widely known? to this
Me,
point?
I'd ask that question too. I would ask that question too. You know, so let me be very, very candid. There are 5 and we are increasing. We've gotten council approval to increase the number of staff. But imagine if you can, the magnitude of Black people in Toronto, 400 tons and tons of Black people in Toronto, right? So imagine that, and that we have a unit with a manager, basically 5 people. And then we have interns that rotate. So at any time we have interns, but they're interns. So the bulk of the work is really on 5 people. 400 years of oppression, trying to change a whole lot in a humongous city, the 4th largest city in North America, with 5 people, right? So we have been approved for increase. I say that to say to you that when you ask why is it not more widely known, it's those things, right? It's just so much that we can do.
So you need greater investment for this to be more effective,
And we need people power. We need Black people power. We need Black people to continue to support us, to support the work. It's very easy. It's very easy for the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit, even with all that, the commitment of the city behind it, and I'm seeing that. But it also it could be quite easy to become, you know, a bottom line on the budget, a last line on the budget that gets erased.
Exactly.
So people have to continue to support the work.
Yeah. Now, what are some of the things, the opposition you face as you try to carry out your work?
Did you ask that, Canon Butler? Did somebody ask that?
I asked. I asked. This is not in the chat as yet, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. So, what are some of the challenges? Listen, we're trying to shift here. We're trying to shift a dinosaur, right? We're trying to shift privilege. We're trying to help people to understand why we need to address anti-Black racism, and why Black people. We're in a huge institution trying to make changes to hundreds and thousands of policies and practices. So often, the challenge is, I thought this was just something almost like something on the side of the desk kind of thing, and then they realize we're serious, you know? So some of the challenges is people not understanding why this is such a focus for the city. The fear of privileges being taken away, for non-Black people, not understanding that what we're working with is targeted universalism. The fear even of Black people, that we're shining light on them, right? And so, you know, knowing that anti-Black racism exists, but you know, we could slide by. Nobody was talking about it. We gotta just get by. We have brilliant people doing work way below what they're qualified for. And they continue to get qualified, and they continue to try, and these things don't happen. Some changes are happening, I have to say. For sure, I've seen lots of changes in the last 2 years. But the challenge mostly is how to deal with it. Do I want to deal with it? You know, are you gonna disappear? And just this is different. This is different, and this is not just when I just got in the city, folks would say things to me like, "Oh, you're the activist, you're the activist group," you know, as if we're gonna pull out some placards and then go away. And so the fact that we are brilliant, skilled people doing work as we would do work in any way, in any place, and we're doing this work right, and we're doing this work. It's sometimes jarring, but I feel like I would say in the last 2 years I've received more support than I've received than not. You know, I've received, let me say this, I've received pleasantly surprising support.
Well, that's good. And it's important to note that you were doing this work even before the current social unrest that we have. And so, that's to be noted.
As a matter of fact, it's important to know that because when we started to get a lot of rush to the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit in the heightening of this racial tension, which I think is so very necessary, we said we have a plan. Or we would get comments like, we need to put something together. We need to, what can we do? Well, it's all there. It's right here. Please take that. Let's do it.
Okay. Just trying to move on to some of the other questions. How can churches engage with the city and be evaluated and kept accountable around anti-Black racism?
So, the mayor about 2 weeks ago sent out an open letter to businesses in Toronto, challenging, encouraging them to look at anti-Black, address anti-Black racism, and that the city would support them because we've already done it. I would say the same thing to churches. I encourage you, I implore you, a call to action. It's time for call to action. Churches, your leaders, so many people look to you. So many people look to you for answers. And so at a time such as this is the time. Let's make the next generation better, and address these issues. This is a human rights issue. This is not some pretty thing. Let's do it. This is not an event. This is a human rights issue. When we have so many people incarcerated, so many of our Black people incarcerated for things that are being done by other people, non-Black people, and not experiencing the same thing. So I would say for sure, please get involved. Okay, reach out to us. Reach out to the city.
Okay, thanks. Now there's several more questions.
Thank you very much. This actually concludes the event for tonight.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Sorry about that.
Okay, but I don't know if there's a way for the questions to be answered in any way, but there's several more, and
what I have done, I have left the contact information in chat so that folks can follow up directly with the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit directly for their questions to be addressed. And if not, you can always send Black Anglicans of Canada email, and we will do our best to respond to some of your questions.
And the email address is blackanglicans@gmail.com.
It's on the final slide.
Okay, we just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, for participating in this discussion, and we remind you that that this is part of a series, and next Wednesday we will have End Racism, Healthy Black People and a Healthy Planet, and the speaker is the well-known Arnold Miners, and the moderator will be our bishop, one of our bishops, Peter Fenty. Thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for all your questions, and thank you, Aina-Nia, for your wealth of knowledge and for taking this time to share your thoughts and your work. We really appreciate that. And we look forward as members of the Black Anglicans to be in touch with you and to see the ways in which you can influence the work that we do in the life of the church. Thank you.